Hello and welcome to our workshop today on the Lean Startup Methodology. This is Paul Hoyt, your host. As we get started, we'd like to give a special thanks to our sponsors, Comcast, the City of San Jose, International Line Builders, the California Department of General Services, the California Water Association, AT&T, and the nationwide network of elite SDVOB. A little housekeeping as we begin. First, you should have a worksheet to complete during this workshop. Actually, it's going to have two parts to it. The part number one is for the first part of our workshop, and the part number two is the business model canvas that we'll be discussing in the second part of our workshop. We're going to take a break in the middle and answer a couple of questions before we move on. This presentation is based on the Awakened CEO system, which is a balanced and comprehensive approach to business growth on multiple levels. In that system, we define 7 different key performance areas: leadership, sales, service and delivery, marketing, product development, operations and administration, and financial management. Today's presentation really encompasses 3 of those most important areas: leadership, marketing, and product development. It takes great leadership at a company to actually employ the Lean Startup methodology, and when you are employing it, it means that the marketing department and the product development folks, the engineers and the inventors, have to work very closely together. They have to cooperate and they have to coordinate and collaborate in order to employ the methodology effectively. Today we're going to talk about principles in the Lean Startup methodology. We'll talk about some of the major concepts and the terminology which is unique to the Lean Startup methodology. Then we're going to take a little break and answer a couple of questions. We'll come back then with the business model canvas, defining all of the different areas of that. We'll talk about some resources that you can use to really understand the Lean Startup methodology and employ it better in your company. And we'll sum it all up to the bottom line, and then we'll answer another couple of questions. So the Lean Startup methodology is known as the Science of Entrepreneurship. Let's talk about a science a little bit. There's been a lot of discussion about science around the world today. And science is the practice of testing assumptions, making hypotheses, and really understanding, taking a look at the data in order to determine what is true and what is not true. And like the regular science that we use in chemistry and biology, the Lean Startup methodology starts with defining your assumptions about the product, about the marketplace, about the environment, about government, about all kinds of things that impact your business, and then defining your hypotheses. Hypotheses such as a sufficient number of people will pass by my store every day, and I'll be able to sell enough every day to keep my doors open. Then you find a way to test your hypotheses, and you adjust your plans and your tests based on your finding, and you do this over and over and over again. That's what scientists do. They run experiments in laboratories, controlling variables as much as they possibly can, and then they adjust their hypotheses and they run new experiments so that they can refine their knowledge of systems and nature, and they can come up with things that are valuable to you and I. Let's talk about the principles of the Lean Startup methodology. One of the most important principles is that innovating startups are not smaller versions of large businesses. This means that a very small business, especially when it's getting started, or a large business when it's getting started with a brand new product line, is not the same as a large business. One of the most challenging sets of people that I've worked with when it comes to starting and growing a business are people who had general manager or vice presidential responsibilities at very large companies, and even those who are in the marketing department of large companies, because they feel like the things that contributed the most to their success when they were working for a large company are the same types of things that will contribute the most to their success at a startup or a very small company, and it simply isn't true. If you go into a small company, if you go into a startup thinking that it is just a smaller version of a big company, and all of the big company policies and procedures and bureaucracy and expense budgets that work so well for very large companies are going to work with a small company, you're going to be sadly mistaken and greatly surprised. And so the Lean Startup methodology has a primary principle in that the first year or years of business will be largely or almost completely unpredictable. If you think you know what's going to happen, if you think you're going to be able to set budgets and create plans and schedules, and they'll work for you in the same manner that budgets and plans and principles worked with a very large company, again, you're going to be greatly surprised. One of the third principles of the Lean Startup methodology is that you have to get out of the building. They want you to interact with your potential marketplace face to face. And that means talking to at least 100 people who you think are your customers and who you think are being in your target market. Seeing them face to face is extremely important because most communication happens non-verbally. You'll be able to tell a lot by their body language and by the expressions on their face, so much more than you could on a phone call, even on a video call, or on email or text messages. And the fourth one is that the Lean Startup methodology is really about searching for and finding the business opportunity. This requires a lot of humility. It requires a lot of openness. It requires the willingness to be wrong and an eagerness to serve the market. I oftentimes talk in marketing presentations about the difference between the marketing mindset and the inventor's mindset. Inventors often go into the garage and create something that they just know the world is going to want, and then they try to find somebody who will buy it. Marketing people do exactly the opposite. Marketing people go to the market and find a pain in the marketplace and then design a product or service to meet the opportunity that they see in the marketplace. And that's what the Lean Startup methodology is all about. It is about systemizing the approach for searching for and finding your business opportunity. Here's a good quote on it. The Lean Startup philosophy seeks to eliminate wasteful practices and increase value-producing practices during the product development phase so that startups can have a better chance of success without requiring large amounts of outside funding, elaborate business plans, or the perfect product. You know, one of the things that I do for my clients is help develop business plans. But honestly, companies that are just getting started, it's way too early for them to develop a business plan. You can only develop a business plan after you know what the business is. And the Lean Startup methodology is what you do before you write the business plan so that you can help discover what the business is. And in my words, I often say that you should engage with the marketplace as quickly and as often as possible to learn the lessons that only the marketplace can teach you. And the Lean Startup methodology is the way that you apply that principle of listening to the marketplace. Here are the major concepts that are included within the Lean Startup methodology: customer discovery and validation, minimum viable product, actionable metrics, the pivot, continuous deployment, the total addressable market, the served addressable market, and the business model canvas. We're going to talk about the first of those before we take our break, and then we're going to talk about the business model canvas when we come back. The first concept is customer discovery and validation. And as we have said, the Lean Startup methodology suggests that you don't know who your real customer is. It also suggests that your ideas are going to need adjustment and that your customer is rarely exactly who you believe your customer to be, and you have to start out thinking that you really don't understand your customer and you really don't know who your customer is. So we seek to, in the first steps of the Lean Startup methodology, to find our customer, to talk to people who we think might be our customer and ask them what they think of our products and services, and ask them what they would do to make the product serve them better, what they would add to it, what they would subtract to it, what they would like a little bit more of, what they would like a little bit less of, and who they think might actually gain the most value from our products and services. The second concept is the minimum viable product. A minimum viable product is a version of a new product that allows the team to collect the maximum amount of validated learning about customers with the least amount of effort. At first, it's just a description, and then it becomes a prototype, and then it becomes a minimum viable product. So we want to create a product that allows us to test our hypotheses. We want to create a product that when we put it in the hands of the people who we think might be our customers, that we're really able to tell whether or not they would like that product and whether or not they really are our potential customers, and give them the opportunity to give us great feedback so that we can refine the product for the next iteration of that product. Third concept is actionable metrics, and that means that you want to gather information that you can use to test your hypotheses, and that requires two things: asking the right questions and getting sufficient data. Asking the right questions, by the way, is a pretty easy thing to do. You can find great lists of questions out there about what would you add, what would you subtract, what would you want more of, what you want less of, what color would you like it in, would you like it bigger, would you like it smaller, what do you think the price should be, what do you think a fair price should be, what do you think an extravagant price should be, what would be the minimum price that you would pay for this and still believe that you could get the value out of it, etc. There's lots of lists of questions that you can use. Getting sufficient data can be the hard part. Getting sufficient data means that you're not just listening to your neighbor or your brother-in-law or the people down the block or your friends, that you're listening to people who really might buy your product. It's really important for you to listen to people who don't know you, because the responses of the people that do know you are likely to be more favorable than the responses of the people who don't know you. And that's one of the reasons why the Lean Startup says get out of your office, go see 100 people who you think might be your customers, and listen to what they have to say so that you can make adjustments to your products that other people who don't know you will really enjoy and that will cause them to want to buy your products more readily. The next concept is continuous deployment, in that you would be constantly refining your product, maybe even putting out a new release of the product every day or two so that you can be continually improving the product and increasing the value that it brings to your clients. That, of course, is challenging and expensive when it comes to physical products, and may even be possible with physical products because it may take 4 to 6 months or 9 months or even a year before you can put out a new version of the product, which means that you have to do testing with the early versions even much more stringently than you do with other types of products. It's essential with digital products. And in fact, some digital products, especially if it's a web-based application or a website, they may make updates to that website, every few days after it's gone through an appropriate amount of internal testing and regression testing and putting it out into the marketplace. Split testing is ideal. With split testing, you put out 2 versions of the product at the same time, or even more than 2 versions of the product at the same time, and you measure the effectiveness of each one of the versions of the product so you can decide which ones of those versions is the one that's going to get you the results that you really want. This is very common with websites, so that you might have different headlines, different colors, different content on the first page, and you find out which ones of those versions get you the results. It's also very common with social media advertising. So you put out 4 or 5 different versions of an ad and find out the one that gives you the best results. The last 2 concepts that we're going to talk about are the target addressable market and then the service available market, or the served addressable market. The target addressable market is also called the total available market, or the TAM. It's what your revenue would be if you had 100% market share in your business and with your products. It's not the same as the size of the industry. It is much smaller than the industry. We'll explain it more in just a second. But first, let's talk about the served addressable market. This is also called the serviceable available market, or the served available market, or the segmented available market, but most often just abbreviated SAM. These are the customers that can actually be reached and served by your business. Let me give you some examples here. So let's say you want to open up a taco stand next to some very large office buildings. The industry in which you're in is the hospitality industry or the restaurant industry, and that can be very, very large. Let's say that your town has, 1 million people in it. The industry there might be able to serve 1 million people a day. Your total available market would be what you are able to serve if you had no competition. And your served available market is what you'd be able to serve if you were able to hit the maximum production capacity of your particular company. So the total available market might be everybody who works in that office building is available to you, but you can only serve 1,000 of them a day. So your served available market would be much less than the total available market. And the target market is a much different concept. Your target market are the people that you are going to aim to hit with your advertising. So it might be those professionals who work in the office buildings next door to you. And again, the ideal customer then might be somebody who eats out for lunch every single day and will come and eat at your taco stand, 3 or 4 days a week. In your worksheet, you're going to find areas for you to make notes on the industry in which you operate, your target addressable market, your service available market, your target market, and your ideal customer. And I invite you to take a look at that and maybe scratch out a few ideas for yourself as we take a break and answer a couple of questions. Before we take that break, we're going to take a couple of questions, and here's the first one. Does the lean methodology apply to service businesses too? And the answer is yes, absolutely. I run a service business, and I try to apply the Lean Startup methodology whenever I can, and not just when I'm starting up the business, but actually when I'm introducing new products to the marketplace. And that's a real important point that I forgot to make in the first part of this workshop, is that the Lean Startup methodology isn't just for startups. It's for companies who are introducing new products to market. So that can be a startup company, or it might be a large company that is bringing a new product to market. Service businesses are one of the easiest types of businesses it is to apply the Lean Startup methodology, and that is because you can change your service offering very quickly. You can change the way you describe it, you can change the price points of it, you can change the way that you package it. In a heartbeat. You can just simply say, I'm going to offer a package B in addition to package A, and try that out and see how the marketplace responds to it. So yes, the Lean Startup methodology applies to all kinds of businesses. Product companies, it applies to service companies, it applies to what I call agent companies, real estate agents, insurance agents, and companies who don't actually have their own products and services, but market and sell the products and services of other companies as well. They can decide which company's products to represent very quickly by applying Lean Startup methodology principles. Here's the second question. If this is such a great idea, why doesn't everybody use the Lean Startup methodology? And that is a great question, and especially today since it's been out for many years now. It's been out for like 8 or 9 years right now. I think the reason is it's still pretty new. Eric Ries wrote his book in 2011 on the Lean Startup methodology, and it was quickly adopted here in Silicon Valley, and it began to spread across the United States and I think across the world, but it's still in the process of spreading. I don't even know if the Lean Startup methodology is taught in business schools around the country, so I'm not sure that many people have even heard about the Lean Startup methodology. One of the biggest reasons I don't think it's widely employed is because it takes a real shift in mindset. People who have an inventor's or an engineer's mindset, who are really proud of their artistry with the products and services they create, can have a real problem with asking the customer whether or not they even like the product that they have created. So it takes both a shift in mindset, it takes a shift in company culture, and it takes education on the Lean Startup in order for this fine methodology to proliferate across the United States. And I think that's why not everybody uses it, is because there's some natural resistance to changing the way they're used to bringing products and services to market, maybe because they haven't really heard of it, and certainly they don't have experience in it, and human nature says that we are naturally resistant to change. Hope that helps. Let's take a quick break. We're going to break for just a couple of minutes, and when we come back, we're going to talk about this next section of the Lean Startup methodology and the business model canvas. We'll be back in just a minute. Welcome back to our presentation on the Lean Startup Methodology. In the first half of our presentation, we talked about the principles of the Lean Startup Methodology and some of the major concepts. And here in the second part of our presentation, we're going to talk about the business model canvas. This is a graphical representation of the business model canvas. It was introduced by Alexander Osterwalder in 2008, and he essentially gave it to the world. This is an open source product. So you can download this template, you can download all kinds of information and examples on the business model canvas and use it freely. Alexander decided to contribute his intellectual property to the marketplace, and we're grateful for that. It has 9 different segments to it, and we're going to go over those one by one. First, there is the value proposition, then customer segments, then channels, customer relationships, revenue streams, resources, partners and suppliers, key activities, and costs. Again, let's take those one at a time. First comes the value proposition. And that's where you define the pain that you are solving, the problem you are solving, the pain that you are relieving, and the gain that you are creating for your clients. One of the most important concepts is that solving a need is much better than fixing a problem, and selling aspirin is much better than selling vitamins. So giving immediate pain relief is far easier from a marketing and sales point of view than it is selling long-term wellness. So if somebody has a broken arm, it's pretty easy to get them to go to the doctor to set that arm and relieve their pain immediately. But it may be much more difficult to convince them that they should go on a diet and exercise program that will pay off in the long term. The second part of the business model canvas is the customer segments, in which you answer the question of who you will serve, because you really do exist for your customers. So you need to find them and understand them in detail, and understand that you really can't know them on that first day. You have to find them using the discovery processes with the Lean Startup methodology, and then build a relationship with them so that you can get your feedback and really discover who your customers are. But when you create the business model canvas for the first time, this is really a guess in who you think your customers are and how you think that you're going to serve them. Section number 3 is on your channels, which is how your products actually get to your customers and what are your routes to market. For example, if you have a physical product, you may sell that online on your website, which is one marketing channel. You may have a team of dedicated sales professionals who call up people and who try to sell them directly with face-to-face marketing or over-the-phone marketing. You may sell your products wholesale to a local supplier, or you may use manufacturers' reps to address marketplaces and territories that you can't get with your own captured sales force. I remember working with a client 10 or 15 years ago who said there were 68 different channels, 68 different ways in which you could get a physical product to market. Big box stores, online sales, wholesale distribution centers, manufacturers rep, boutique stores, department stores, your own stores, etc. There's lots and lots of options about how you bring your products and services to market. Section number 4 is on customer relationships, which is how do you get, keep, and grow customers. This is really about both sales strategies and customer service strategies. So how are you going to reach your customers? What are you going to say to them? How are you going to sell to them? Do you have a product funnel strategy, etc.? And how are you going to service your customers once you actually sell the product? And this does vary according to the channel. So for example, if you decide to sell your software to companies who have $50,000 in revenue or less through marketing partners, you may actually ask those marketing partners to provide first-line service or entire service of your customers, and only come to you to provide service if they have a question that they don't know how to answer. So your service strategy and your sales strategy is dramatically dependent on your channel strategy. The 5th section of the business model canvas is on revenue streams, which is how do you make money from your customer segments? What will your customers pay for, and how do you get your money? What are your products? Are you selling tacos and burritos and chips and soft drinks and beer? And what portion of your revenues do you expect from each one of those different revenue streams? Are you selling wholesale? Are you selling retail? Are you selling online? Are you selling through international distributors, etc.? This is the place where you define all of your revenue streams. Section 6 is on resources, where you define what assets are important and necessary for your business to start and grow. Do you need capital? How about the people? What about your team members that you need? How about facilities and cars and intellectual property and suppliers? Here's your opportunity to define those assets and resources that you will need to actually execute your business model. Section 7 is on partners and suppliers. Who are you going to partner with and what activities will they perform and when? And this varies, by the way, according to the phase of growth. For example, if you're bringing a physical product to market, you may outsource some of the manufacturing or some of the assembly until you get large enough to afford to bring that in-house, until you get your own equipment or you get your own kitchens or you get whatever you need in order to reduce some of the cost of creating your product by bringing those activities in-house yourself. Number 8 is your key activities, which is where you answer the question of what are the most important things that you need to do to make this business model work. Where you answer the question of what are the most important things you need to do to make this business model work, and what are your critical competencies, and what are your critical success factors. And by the way, this almost always includes sales and marketing. It is a rare company these days that doesn't need sales and marketing expertise, and for which sales and marketing isn't one of their critical success factor. And the last section of the business model canvas is on cost. This is where you think about the most important resources and the most expensive ones, where you understand your fixed costs, your variable costs, and your economies of scale, making the note that some of them are obvious and some of them are not. So that is the business model canvas, which was introduced again by Alexander Osterwalder in 2008, and which you can use to define your business or your new product opportunity within your business. Again, as we made the point during the break, the lean startup methodology, I think, is a little bit misnamed. It really should be the lean bring your product to market methodology that you can use whether or not you already have an existing business or whether you're going to start one from scratch. And here are a couple of other resources that you might take a look at. First, the book written in 2011 by Eric Ries on the lean startup methodology, how today's entrepreneurs use continuous innovation to create radically successful businesses. That is the Bible of the lean startup methodology, and I recommend that you read that one. And here's a couple of more by a gentleman named Steve Blank. He wrote a book that was before the lean startup methodology called The 4 Steps to the Epiphany. Steve was a successful entrepreneur. However, in his second business, he failed miserably and lost his investors millions of dollars before he had the epiphany that, hey, wait a minute, I really do have to listen to my marketplace. And then he wrote the Startup Owner's Manual after the Lean Startup book was introduced in 2011. And all 3 of these are very valuable resources. So here's the bottom line. The bottom line is that you can save a lot of time, money, and heartache if you apply scientific principles to starting your business or bringing new products and services to marketplace. You're going to be a lot more attractive to investors when you apply the lean startup principles, and I think much more successful too. So that's been our agenda today. We've talked about principles in the lean startup methodology and some of the major concepts. We took a little break and we came back and talked about the 9 different segments with the business model canvas. I shared a couple of resources with you and we summed it all up to the bottom line. Here's your homework and the exercise. I'd like for you to study the lean startup methodology a little bit more and create your own business model canvas and get coaching to help you identify your assumptions, create your hypotheses, develop ways to test your hypotheses, and develop great plans to take action on your results. We're going to answer a couple of more questions here in just a little bit, but before we do, we also want to give thanks again to our sponsors, Comcast, the City of San Jose, International Line Builders, the California Department of General Services, the California Water Association, AT&T, and the nationwide network of elite SDVOB. That's been our presentation on the Lean Startup methodology. We've got just a couple of questions here. and I'm going to answer these before we say goodbye for the day. The first one is, I already have a prototype, and what do I do next? Good question. I think the next step is to make sure your prototype is really a minimum viable product. And by definition, a minimum viable product is the smallest product that you can create, or the least expensive product that you can create, that actually will provide value to the customer in the way that you want to and allows you to test your hypotheses. Oftentimes, prototypes are just created to test whether or not you can actually create the product. Will this thing actually work? Can I actually engineer or invent that which I want to engineer and invent? And are not specifically designed to test your hypotheses about the business opportunity using the lean startup methodology approach. So once you have a prototype, ask yourself that question: is this really the minimum viable product? And what changes do I need to make to turn it into the minimum viable product so that I can test it in the marketplace using the lean startup principles? Second and last question today is, how do I use my minimum viable product to test the market? I'll go back to what we said in the early stages, and that is you have to get out of the building. Make it a point to talk to 100 customers face to face, sharing the product or service with them, asking them questions about what they really liked about it, what they didn't like about it, what they would add to it, what they would take away from it, what they'd like to see more of, what they'd like to see less of, what they would think is a fair price, what they think would be too much of a price, what they think would be a low price, etc. There's lots of different questions, but the bottom line is one of the most critical parts of the lean startup methodology is that you get out of the building, get out of your office, and talk to the people who you think are your customers face to face so that you can get the feedback that the marketplace can give you. In my own words, you engage with the marketplace as quickly as possible and as often as possible so that you can learn the lessons that only the marketplace can teach you. And then, and only then, can you have a relentless pursuit of financial stability. This has been Paul Hoyt, thanking you for attending our workshop today on the Lean Startup methodology and wishing you every success in business and in life.